Hi guys, welcome back to Nairobi Legal. This particular video is an introduction to the law of succession in Kenya, and we are going to be discussing various topics under the law of succession. But for the start, as you can already see, I want us to have an overview of what succession law means within the Kenyan context. As we begin our discussion on the law of succession in Kenya, these are some of the 4 key questions that might come to your mind as a student of the law of succession. The first one being that what does the law of succession deal with? Now, in the course of many videos to come, you're going to be able to appreciate what the law of succession deals with in the Kenyan context. Also, we're going to be discussing the importance of the law of succession. And thirdly, as you can see from your screen, as a student, you might wonder what are the related disciplines to the law of succession. Remember that the law is intertwined, and you're going to discover along the way that family law and property law comes into play when succession disputes arise. And of course, lastly, you might wonder up to this point in time that what is the reason for having a legal system that deals with succession. Now, there's a reason why we have a legal system in Kenya that is specifically dealing with matters of succession. So in this particular slide, you can see 3 key importance of the law of succession. One being that it will help a person to protect their property from wastage, meaning that if you've understood the law of succession and the topics I'm going to discuss in more videos to come, you will know how you're going to protect your property from wastage even after your death. The other thing is that the state, through the law of succession, ensures that it does not get overburdened with the task of determining the disposition of property in society. Just to break this down for you, can you imagine if each and every time a person died, his or her children had to go to court and the court had to determine on how that property would be shared? That will overburden the state, and so the law of succession gives you the liberty to fix and put together your affairs so that you know how your property is going to be divided to avoid all these many court battles. The other importance of the law of succession is that it gives you control over your property even if you're dead, meaning that you can leave behind the framework on how you wish your property to be managed and who you wish to manage that property, and that way, even in your death, you have control over your property. These are the 3 key importance of the law of succession in Kenya. When it comes to succession, death, writing wills, we know that people are not comfortable to discuss about issues of death. And as you can see from your screen, we have certain myths about wills. Some people assume that by writing a will, you're simply predicting your death. Now, this is not true. And also, some people may assume that a will cannot be changed, and that is not true as well. Remember that today you might have written a will saying that you have 4 pieces of land in Nairobi and 16 apartments, and tomorrow you actually go ahead to sell some of them. Remember, that way you can still go back to update your will to know that you're going to remove certain property that you've sold and add more property that you could have bought in the process. This example clearly tells you that a will can be changed. The other myth people have is that one will is enough. Now, this is not true. One will may not be enough. In fact, like I've stated, you could have written a will incorporating property today, but along the way, 4 years, 10 years from now, you buy more property, and so you need to go and add that property to your will, meaning that you can actually always go back to your will and change it, and one will is not necessarily enough. And the other myth someone may have is that making a will is a form-filling process. No, this is not true. And as you continue watching my videos on the law of succession in Kenya, you're going to be in a position to appreciate what the succession law means in the Kenyan context. And actually, if you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing so that you receive notifications each and every time I'll be posting a new video on the law of succession. The goal is that you must be able to appreciate the basics of the law of succession within the Kenyan context. The next key thing you need to appreciate is that there are 2 ways in which property can devolve upon death of the owner of that property. And by devolving, what I mean here is that how does property pass from one person to the other? And the reason why I'm using these specific terms is that the law of succession is a very specific unit. So you have to use a particular terminology, which is the language that is used when dealing with questions to do with the law of succession in Kenya. And so the takeout point here is that a person can either die tested or intestate. By tested, what I mean is that a person dies having left behind a valid will, and that will could be oral, it could be written, or it could be privileged. Now, for now, don't worry about these terms. Each one of them will be discussed in details in more videos to come. We are simply introducing the course so that you have the overview of what it is. Now, of course, like I've already stated, these first three types of wills are applicable in Kenya, and these other two are not applicable, or rather they're not common in Kenya, and this is what we call conditional wills and joint wills. So our focus in the Kenyan context, it will be on oral wills, written wills, and privileged wills. As you can already see on your screen, this is what a privileged will means. And so you've already seen that a person can die tested, and by tested what we mean is that you leave behind a valid will. Having understood tested succession, a person can also die intestate, and by intestate what we mean here is that that particular person dies without a will, or that person could have made an invalid will. So under intestate succession, you've either died without a will, or during the course of your lifetime you made an invalid will. So we consider you to have died intestate. And so remember that if a person dies intestate, then we have what we call the rules of intestacy. And these rules are found in the Law of Succession Act that will apply to that particular circumstance. This takes you back to why I began by telling you it is very crucial for a person to have a valid will during their lifetime. And so the other thing you need to appreciate is that when it comes to intestate succession, the general rule is that where there are no relatives, property goes to the state. This is the sad part of dying intestate and you do not have relatives. So that property will go to the state. Having understood testate and intestate succession, now I want you to appreciate that there are other modes of devolution of property. And like I stated earlier, devolution means other ways through which property can pass from one person to another. The reason why I'm keeping on using these big words is because the law of succession has a specific language to be used. So that's why I keep on saying, how does property devolve from one person to another? That's the language that is used in the law of succession. And so, coming back to our main point here, other than through a will, property can devolve through three other ways, meaning that wills aside, we also have other ways through which property is going to be able to move from one person to another if one of the two people dies and there's an issue of succession. And so the first way through which property can move from one person to another without using a will is what we call survivorship. And by survivorship, what I mean is that, let's say if we have two people, person A and person B, and person B dies, then the interest in that property that a person A and B had together transfers to person A automatically. An example here would be joint tenancy. So in a joint tenancy, if an apartment is owned by person A and person B, through a joint tenancy, what we mean here is that if either of the two parties dies, then automatically the interest in that property will transfer to the surviving person. That's what we call survivorship. As you can see already here, there's no will involved, but property is already exchanging hands. The other mode of devolution of property other than through a will is what we call nomination, and this happens a lot under insurance schemes and pension schemes. We know that you can take up an insurance and you list a beneficiary, meaning that all your accrued benefits are going to go to that particular person. And what you need to understand here is that the accrued benefits from insurance schemes and pension schemes do not form part of the estate of the deceased. And by the term estate, this is just a property that is owned by the deceased. So the benefits from insurance pension schemes will never form part of the estate of the deceased. There is a different mode through which that property is going to be transferred to whoever person that was nominated by the deceased. And what applies in cases of nomination is what we call pension law and not the law of succession. The other way through which property is going to be able to devolve to another person other than through a will is what we call donatio multis causa, and this is a Latin word to mean a gift in contemplation of death. This is provided for under section 31 of the Law of Succession Act of Kenya, meaning that you can make a gift in contemplation of death. I give you my car upon my death, meaning that that car is actually going to be given to you after certain conditions have been met, as we're going to see in the next slide. So basically the essence of this particular slide was for you to appreciate that there are other means through which property is going to exchange hands upon death of the owner other than through a will. Just to explain further what a gift in contemplation of death means, and I'm referring to section 31 of the Law of Succession Act of Kenya. So a gift in contemplation of death is made during the lifetime of the person who is making that gift, and it's conditional upon the death of that particular person. So let's say, Rogers, I'm very ill, I'm very sick, or there's an imminent danger that I know is going to cause loss of my life. In this case, I go ahead to say I give my car to John, my best friend, to take it upon my death. You see, that is what we call a gift in contemplation of death. I suspect that I'm not going to make it, and so I give my property to someone else. And so the takeout point here is that a gift in contemplation of death is similar to a lifetime gift, in that the subject matter is delivered to the donee during the donor's lifetime, meaning that I'm the donor and the person receiving, an example, John receiving my car, is the donee. But that gift takes effect upon my death, meaning that I must die for that gift to hold. However, if I make a gift in contemplation of death, then I go to my room and hang myself, meaning that I've committed suicide. In this case, John will never get the car I gave him in contemplation of my death, because the law provides that you can't make a gift in contemplation of death and go ahead to commit suicide. So for that to hold, it can either be an illness or imminent danger you're facing, knowing that you're going to lose your life. The other thing you need to appreciate is that a gift in contemplation of death cannot be revoked by a subsequent will, meaning that it cannot be given away as a gift under a will to someone else. So if you've given to me a gift in contemplation of death, then someone else cannot also get that gift in form of a will that you might have. And so some of the things you need to appreciate them by reading this section 31 to appreciate it, because along the way you're going to discover that there are certain particular conditions that you must fulfill for a gift in contemplation of death to hold. Number one, like we've said before, it is conditional upon death of the person that is actually giving away that gift to the donee. And number two, it is also critical for you to appreciate that if you make a gift in contemplation of death, you are at liberty at any time before your death to lawfully request its return, meaning that maybe if I'm going into a war, I'm a soldier in Somalia, and I know in the next about 10 minutes I'm going to be shot dead, then I make a gift in contemplation of my death, and it so happens that I actually don't die. I'm at liberty to request lawfully for the return of my gift to the person I've made it to. It could be that I say I give my house or I give my car to my best friend John upon my death, and I happen not to die. No one shoots me. In that case, I can actually repossess my car from John. And so for you to be able to appreciate this much further as a student of succession law in Kenya, consider reading the case of Cain versus Moon, so that you understand conditions which need to be satisfied for a valid gift in contemplation of death to hold. Also remember to read through this section critically so that you appreciate it. We started by talking about tested and intested succession, and we reached a point whereby I've also introduced you to other modes through which property can devolve from the deceased person to the beneficiaries, or the deceased person's to anyone else he wants to have his property other than through a will. So this is where we ended up discussing about a gift in contemplation of death. That was a brief introduction into the law of succession in Kenya, and in the next video we go into the specifics of the law of succession, specifically tested succession, and we're going to look at written wills, oral wills, privileged wills, and testamentary freedom. Remember that you have the freedom to give away your property the way you wish through writing a will, but also you're going to be able to appreciate that this freedom is limited according to the Law of Succession Act of Kenya. To continue enjoying these discussions, if you're new to Nairobi Legal, consider subscribing so that you receive notifications each and every single time I'm going to be posting a new video on the law of succession in Kenya. Thank you.